This tutorial will carry on from the last tutorial where we added walls, doors, windows, floors, and roofs. We're now going to add sections, which allows you to see your building project in a different way. I'm going to start with the first floor, and on the Architecture tab, we do not actually have the section symbols. We actually go to the View tab, and on the View tab, we have other ways to look at the project that we can add, like the section symbols, callouts, which is where we zoom in to a certain part of a drawing, like a floor plan detail, and then it adds a more highly scaled drawing to the project, as well as adding additional elevations and even other types of elevations like interior elevations. But we're going to stick with sections for this tutorial, and we're going to click on the section link, and we're going to think about where should we draw a section in our project. Typically, we need at least one longitudinal and one transverse. So I'm going to start with a longitudinal. This is a porch on the project, so even though I haven't built it yet, I'm going to go ahead and start outside of the project and draw that section marker through. You notice with the section marker that where I started created the head of the section marker, which has the information of where it will be on a sheet once it's placed on a sheet. So the bottom of the symbol is going to be the sheet number, the top of the symbol is going to be the number of the drawing on the sheet. You also notice that we have this dashed line with arrows. That's showing the extent of where this view is going to actually show the building that you're creating. This is the default because what it's doing is it's setting it out past the building a certain distance. I can click on this arrow and I can pull it in, but that would mean I would not see these walls beyond where I cut through the project. I can access this section in two different ways. I can either come over here to our project browser, which now you notice we have a sections tab with a plus next to it, and the first section I created is called section 1, or I can double click on the point of that symbol. I'm going to do that. So now it opens section 1, and it looks really odd, right? It's very abstract looking because we have just really gotten started on this project. We can see all of the levels that we created earlier, and I'm going to go ahead and rename this section. If I go look at the first floor, I created this project so that north is up, but you should have done the project north versus true north tutorial and oriented your project so that north is up at least in true north on your project. But because this is the north side of my project, I know that this is a west-east building section, so I want to rename that a west-east building section. So I'm going to go rename, and I'm going to call it west-east building section. And again, I want to make sure that I use all caps, and I'm distinguishing that it is a building section because I will have other sections like wall sections, and I want to be clear. You notice Revit does the same thing. It calls it sections building sections. So now that I have this section that's been renamed, I have different elements that are important to look at. I have the crop line. The crop line allows me to adjust that crop, and again, this is based on what we see in plan. I'm going to close my extra views for now, and I'm going to use tile views to be able to see what happens when I switch, what happens with that crop region. So remember when we looked at this section symbol, I need to click on it again. You notice I clicked on it and it highlighted that crop view. That's because this dashed line is this cropped view. So if I adjust the crop like this, clicking on that blue dot and pulling it over, and then I click on the symbol, you notice that that dashed line moved. I shouldn't do that because I haven't drawn the porch yet, and it will cut off the porch with the crop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to the top, and I'm going to go to undo and undo the change of that crop line. And what the crop does is it actually crops a view. So you notice here that we have got our floor slab below our first level, but our first level could be the ground plane. So what I can do is click on that, and I can drag that up to relate to the first floor. Now that's not really appropriate for a section, but that would be appropriate for an elevation. So I want to undo that as well. And just as an example, I can go to an elevation. I can turn on my crop view because that crop view is not turned on now, and I can do that down here at the bottom with our toolbar. Show crop region, and it turns that crop view on, and we can see how big it is. And that's just the default with Revit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the crop region, click on that blue dot, and I'm going to slowly move it up here. So it does kind of snap to that level, but you want to be careful and make sure it doesn't cut off anything important. And then what I can do is I can hide that crop view, and then we don't see that anymore, but then it cuts off anything below that first floor, which might be my ground plane. Now, if I want to just not crop at all, the tool right next to it is Do Not Crop View, and I can toggle on and off. You notice also that the section symbol changes a little bit when I do that, and that's because the section symbol is adjusting between a cropped view and a non-cropped view. So now we've got that section. I want to add another section, a transverse, now that I have my longitudinal. So I'm going to go back up to the top, and I'm going to add that, and I'm going to put it here. You need to be careful when you place those that you don't roll over dimensions or anything. These are dimensions from the CAD file, so that's not a big deal, but you may need to move it in different parts of your project. And let's say I don't like having the head here. I actually want it on the other side. So we can flip it. We can flip it in the opposite direction. And then actually, if I click on it again and zoom in, I can click on that tool at the bottom there and change where the head and the foot of that symbol is. I can also flip it so that it looks in a different direction if I want it to look to that side of the house, and you notice the dashed line changes as well. Sometimes you might need both, so you may need two section symbols there. So now I want to open this section, which it's calling it section 1 because we renamed the other one. We have the crop view, which we can turn off again, and we can start to see things again, like our floor slab and then our roof. So one thing you may notice is that our floor slabs and our roofs are not pochade like they were with our walls. So I can click on that, and similar to our walls, I can go into Edit and change the coarse scale fill pattern to solid. And because I use the same floor for my first floor and my second floor, both of them are pochade. I need to do the same thing with my roof and change the coarse scale fill pattern to black. Most things allow you to add that poche, but sometimes it's actually buried deeper into the properties or even into the structure. So look for that, and if you can't find it, talk to your professor for help. Here we can see the roof beyond, so that's why it's not pochade. And then we can see that one wall that we had attaching to the top base, whereas the rest of them have not been brought up to the roof yet. So these things are important to think about as you're starting to look at the building in section, and it allows you to start to understand the importance of sections in helping you design, not just in showing information to clients and to contractors.